Do you know about the diminished seventh chord? If not, you're in for a great surprise because it's the chord that leads everywhere. First of all, what is a diminished seventh chord? Well, let's take chords in general. That's a major chord, and if I add the seventh note of the scale, that's called a major seventh. But a normal seventh, like C seventh, you lower the seventh. It's a flat of seventh, in other words. Okay. Now, a diminished triad is where you lower the third and the fifth, a half step. So that's a diminished triad. But a diminished seventh is you have the seventh plus you lower that a half step. So it's a diminished seventh. The seventh itself is diminished. It's not only a diminished chord, but the seventh is diminished by lowering in a half step. Okay? Now, there's only 3 of those chords, believe it or not. This is a 4-note chord, and there's 12 possibilities on the keyboard, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, right? Only 12 different keys that you can play, 12 different notes. So I'm playing 4 of those 12. That's 1/3 of 12, isn't it? Now if I move up a half a step, all the notes up a half a step, then I've got also a diminished seventh chord there, don't I? That's still a diminished seventh chord, but it's up a half step. That would be known as the C sharp diminished seventh chord, or the E diminished seventh chord, or the G diminished seventh chord, or the B flat diminished seventh chord, because every single note of a diminished seventh chord can function as a root. Okay, now let's move up another half step. That's still a diminished seventh chord, but this time it's a D diminished seventh chord, or an F diminished seventh chord, or an A flat diminished seventh chord, or a B or C flat diminished seventh chord, right? Now let's move up another half step. Does that look familiar? Well, it should, because it's the same chord that we started with, except upside down. I just took that C from the bottom and put it on top, you see? That's the chord we started with. So there's 4 notes there, 4 out of the 12. Here's 4 more, that's 8. And when we get 4 more, that's 12. So we've exhausted all the possibilities, haven't we? So if we move up another half step, that's like the original I started with. If we move up another half step, that's like the second chord we started. Okay? If I move up another half step, that's like the third chord we started. So there's really only 3 diminished seventh chords. That one, that one, that one. And remember, each note of the diminished seventh chord can function as the root. Okay? So it could have 4 names, couldn't it? Each diminished seventh chord. Now, the amazing thing, that's amazing enough, but the amazing thing about diminished seventh chords is you can get them to lead most anywhere. Let's say you're playing in the key of C. You're coming along. Now, if you go to diminished seventh chord, now if you lower any one of those notes, any one, you get a dominant seventh chord, like that. That's a B seventh chord. Where do dominant seventh chords want to lead? They always want to lead up a fourth, don't they? So if I want to modulate from the key of C to the key of E, I just find a diminished seventh chord, lower the bottom note, and then that modulates to the key of E, doesn't it? So now we're in the key of E. Okay, let's come back to C. If I get that diminished seventh chord and lower the second note, I've got a dominant seventh chord there too. That's a D dominant seventh chord, and that leads to G. So if I want to get to G, I can do it that way. Okay, let's go back to that original chord. If I lower the third note a half step from F sharp to F, that's a F seventh chord. Where does the F seventh chord want to go? Up to B flat, right? Okay. So let's come back to the original chord. Let's see, if I lower the top note, we've lowered all notes except the top note. If I lower the top note half step, that's A flat 7. And A flat 7 wants to go to D flat. Okay? So in other words, I can get to 4 different keys with that one chord, can I? Just by lowering one of the notes. If I move up to if I choose the second chord, then I can get to 4 more keys. For example, if I am playing that chord and lower the bottom note a half step, that's C7, so that goes to F, doesn't it? Okay, so I won't play any more examples, but you get the idea. You lower any note of a diminished seventh chord, and that becomes a dominant seventh, and that dominant seventh can be used to move up a fourth. Okay, now if you move any two notes, no, let me rephrase that. If you move any note up a half a step, you get a minor 6 chord. Any note up a half step, okay? I moved that note up a half step, and that's A minor 6. A minor 6, okay? So any note, let me move the bottom note. Yeah, there's... That's a minor 7th chord too. Any note up a half step. Okay, now if I move any notes up two, any two notes up a half step, I get a major 6. I'm moving the bottom and the top, okay? Let me move the middle two. That's a C6. So you move any two notes up a half step and you get a major 6, okay? So it's kind of a cool thing to know. If you move any two notes down a half a step, what do you get? You also get a major 6. That's F major 6, okay? Any two notes down a half step, that's B6, okay? So just to review, there's only 3 diminished 7th chords. That one, that one, that one. And each one can function as the root because there's only those 4 possibilities. When you move any given note of a diminished 7th chord down a half step, that becomes a dominant 7th, which allows you to modulate to the next key, okay? I realize this is a little bit advanced, so if you're not too experienced in piano or music, don't feel bad, okay? It's maybe new material for you, but think about it and you'll assimilate it in due time, okay? So if you move any one note down, you get a dominant 7th chord. If you move any note up half step, you get a minor 6. If you move any two notes up half step, you get a major 6. Any two notes down half step, you also get a major 6. Okay, so you can go most anywhere with a diminished 7th chord. It's like a doorway to anywhere you want to go. Okay, that's it for today. So thanks for being with me. If you enjoy these kind of piano tips, then come on over to playpiano.com and sign up for our free newsletter of piano tips. I think you're going to love it. So hope to see you there. Bye bye for now.